Welcome to the second lecture on representations of finite groups. In the first lecture, I defined what is a representation of a group and I gave definition of equivalence of two representations. So continuing that line, let me begin with a small observation. Let us call it a proposition. So what does it say? The set of equivalence classes, the set of equivalence classes of all degree n representations of a group G is in bijection with the set. So what is that set? It is a set of all homomorphism from G to G, L and C. Okay, set of all invertible n by n complex matrices, set of all homomorphism from there, right? A representation, degree n representation of G is just a homomorphism from G into G, L and C, or equality n dimensional complex vector space. And now I want equivalence classes, so modulo that equivalence, and that is precisely conjugation, G, L and C, modulo conjugation. Okay, so this is just immediate from the definition. Nevertheless, let us write a few lines, the proof. Okay, so if you take any representation is a homomorphism from the group G to G, L and C, and what is an equivalence class of this? It is just conjugation by an invertible matrix, right? If you see in terms of matrices. So therefore an equivalence class sits inside this. Conversely, if you take a homomorphism phi from say G to G, L and C is a representation. If I have this representation of G, and you take any invertible matrix T belonging to G, L and C, then let us call psi from G to G, L and C given by psi on acting on a group element is nothing but T inverse phi G T. Okay, this is again a group homomorphism, right? So because it is just I'm just composing the original homomorphism with the conjugation in the group G, L and C by this group element T. Right? This is a representation of G that is equivalent to phi. Okay, just by definition. By definition of equivalence, it's an equivalent representation, right? So this is a very simple observation. If your set is finite, that's not really interesting in the sense that you just need to enumerate or find those representations explicitly. But when this set is infinite, then it is more interesting because you would like to see what is the what is the structure on this set, okay? And what you would like to find a nice algebraic or topological or geometric structure on this, let me call it, space of equivalent representations of degree n of the group G. Okay, all right, so let us see an example here. Let us take G to be the additive group of integers. Okay, so if phi from integers to G, L and C is a representation, then what can you say about it? If you have a representation of integers, so it's an infinite cyclic group, it is just enough to define it on the generator, which is the integer 1, right? but there is no choice involved here. You could actually map it to any matrix here, any invertible matrix here, right? So therefore is a representation, then phi is completely determined by its value at 1, right? So that is phi of 1, it has to be an element of GLNC, and no choice is involved here. You could actually take any element of GLNC. So therefore, thus, what is this set? Hom Z GLNC. It is just the same as the set GLNC, right? Because you could just assign 1 to any invertible n by n complex matrix. And then what is the quotient of GLNC by this conjugation action by GLNC on itself? It is precisely the set of conjugacy classes of GLNC. So thus this set is this, and the set of equivalence classes of degree n representations of the additive group of integers, okay, it is in bijection with conjugacy classes of GLNC. Conjugacy classes in GLNC. So here it is quite an interesting set. So GLNC, set of all conjugacy class of GLNC, parameterize the all equivalence classes of degree and representations of integers, right? Alright, so let's make some more observations about equivalence of representations. So if phi from G to C star is a degree 1 representation of G, then phi is equivalent to a trivial representation if and only if phi is itself a trivial representation. Very simple observation. So suppose that phi and psi are equal, phi is equivalent to psi, where psi is a trivial representation. Recall that a trivial representation means a degree 1 representation which is trivial as a map, trivial as a group homomorphism. That is, psi G is 1 for every G in G. Now if phi and psi are equivalent, that means there is a complex number, okay, non-zero complex number, such that phi G can be written as lambda inverse psi G lambda for all G in G. But now you are in C star, which is abelian, okay, so, and this is 1, so it just become 1, and you can reverse the steps. So a representation, degree 1 representation is equivalent to a trivial representation if and only if it is itself trivial. And you can, in fact, you can generalize this. So 2 degree 1 representations are equivalent if and only if they are actually same, right? So you can just see that here you will get lambda inverse psi G lambda, but you are in C star, so it get cancelled and you get phi G equal to psi G, right? So in degree 1, equivalence of representations is just same as equality, but that's not the case when you go to higher degrees. And let's say an example, a simple example. So take G to be the cyclic group of order n, viewed as group of integers mod n, and take these 2 representations, phi from G to GL to C given by phi of any m bar is cosine 2 pi m by n minus sine 2 pi by m, sine 2 pi by m and cosine 2 pi m by n, which is just rotation on the plane, okay, and psi from G to GL to C by psi of m bar equal to this matrix, which is a diagonal matrix, which is e to power 2 pi I m by n 0 0 e to power minus 2 pi m by n. So you can see that as maps they are certainly different. One phi for each m bar gives you this matrix, whereas psi for each m bar gives you a diagonal matrix. So my claim is they are actually equivalent. So why phi and psi are equivalent? So take A to be this matrix I minus I 1 1, and you can easily check that it's an invertible matrix, okay, it's clearly an invertible matrix. In fact, you can compute it and check that A inverse is 1 by 2i 1i minus 1i. Okay, and A inverse phi m bar A is psi m bar for all m bar in Z mod nz. Okay, therefore phi and psi are equivalent degree 2 representations, okay, which are not same as representations, which are not same as maps, not same as group homomorphisms. All right. So in therefore, when the degree of the representations is bigger than or equal to 2, then you really need to it takes some effort to check whether two representations are equivalent. We have this representation psi from Z mod nz into GL2C, okay, given by psi of m bar equals to this matrix e to power 2 pi I m by n 0 0 e to power minus 2 pi I m by n. Okay, look at this matrix. So what is special about this matrix? The special thing about this matrix is the following. If you look at this subspace, so here this I am identifying it with GL of C2, right? The general linear group of two-dimensional complex vector space. All right. So look at this. So if you consider W to be the subspace spanned by E1, okay, where E1 is 1 0, and take W prime to be the subspace spanned by E2, where E2 is 0 1. Then what we observe here is that we see that for each m bar in Z mod nz, psi m bar, which is this matrix preserves these subspaces. Okay, so psi m bar acting on E1, so it is enough to check on the generator of on the basis element of this one-dimensional vector space E1, and you see that it is what? And if you view this EIs as column vectors 1 0, okay, this is what? This is simply get first row first column, so it is e to power 2 pi I m by n, okay, and second row first column is simply 0, right, which you can write it as e to power 2 pi I m by n times E1. All right, so what is this representation doing is, and this is really happening for all m belonging to Z mod nz. So for each group element, this matrix or this linear transformation psi m bar is actually mapping the subspace spanned by EI into itself, and the same happens for E2. Okay, so but at the same time one can also view this so you see that one can break up this map psi into two components. So let us call one as psi 1. One can break psi into two parts. Okay, let us call first as psi 1. I write above here psi 1, and psi 1 so psi 1 of m bar is just e to power 2 pi I m by n. Okay, so you see that psi 1 is a map from Z mod nz into C star, which is, you can view it as GL of just one-dimensional complex vector space. And similarly, psi 2 of m bar is e to power minus 2 pi I m by n. Psi 2, you can view it as a map from Z mod nz into again C star, which you are identifying with GL of one-dimensional complex vector space, right? And then what is this psi of m bar then? Psi of m bar is just this block matrix. Psi 1 of m bar 0 0 and psi 2 of m bar. Right? This is what happening in this particular example. So this is what we really desire to do for an arbitrary representation of a group. So given a representation of a group into GL and C, okay, for some n, we want to be able to decompose it as some sum, okay, of sub representations, or in terms of matrices we want to be able to write the at each group element the corresponding matrix, we want to be able to write it as a block matrices. Okay, so this is what is called the sub representation decomposition of the given representation. So for that we need to develop some terminology. So let us begin. So here is the first definition in this direction. Okay, so let phi from G to GLV be a representation of a group G. Then of subspace W of this vector space V is called G invariant. G invariant if it is invariant under the action of the group G. You see, representation is just an action of the group G on the vector space. So G invariant if, look at this phi G. So each phi G is a linear transformation here. I want that whenever it acts on an element of W, it should fall in W for all little w in capital W. Okay, and for all G in the group G. Then we say that W is a G invariant subspace. Alright. And once you have, and another observation is, so remark, important remark here is that, so if phi from G to GLV is a representation and W is a G invariant subspace, so if W contained in V is a G invariant subspace, of a representation phi of G, then what is then phi? Phi is just a map from G to GLV, right? So then you can therefore restrict it. Then phi, when you phi from G to GL of W then makes sense. Okay, because you see that for every group element phi G, whenever it acts on W, whenever you apply this operator on W, it again falls back in W. So you can restrict this representation. Okay, so there is a conflict of terminology here. Here restriction doesn't mean that I'm restricting the map phi somewhere. What I'm saying is that I can view this phi as a map going into GLW, right? Because phi of any little g is an invertible linear transformation of V, but is also an invertible linear transformation of W. So you view it as an invertible linear transformation of W. Okay, so this, and we denote it by phi restricted to W. Okay, just for the moment we can denote it by this. So this is what is called a sub-representation of G. So given a representation phi of a group G and a G invariant subspace W of V, you get a sub-representation of that representation. If phi from G to GLV is a representation of G and your vector space V can be written as V1 direct sum V2 for G invariant subspaces V1 V2 of the vector space V, then we have two sub-representation. We have let us call this phi 1 from G to GL of V1, right, as explained before, and we also have phi 2 from G to GL of V2. Then what is the relation between phi and phi 1 and phi 1 and phi 2? Okay, So now you see that if you fix, you can take a basis of the vector space V1, subspace V1, and a basis of the subspace V2, and since it's a direct sum, the union will form a basis of V2, the basis of V, okay, and the dimension of V1 plus dimension of V2 is same as dimension of V, right? So one can easily see that for each G in the group G, if you want to see in terms of matrices, we can define this phi 1, let us denote it by the same notation, phi 1 direct sum phi 2 from G to GL of V by setting phi 1 direct sum phi 2, okay, this acting on a group element G. So it has to be what? It has to be an invertible linear transformation of this vector space V, right? And this you can define it as phi 1 of, and it has to act on a vectors V1, V2, okay? So any element of V1 direct sum V2 can be written uniquely in this form, right? So it will act on phi 1G acting on V1 plus phi 2G acting on V2. One can easily check that it's actually a homomorphism from G to GLV, all right? And it turns out that phi is in fact equivalent to phi 1 direct sum phi 2 with this definition. So therefore, if we have a vector space which can be decomposed as a direct sum of two G invariant subspaces for a given representation phi, then you can restrict this representation, okay? So this is basically your phi restricted to V1 and this is your phi restricted to V2. So you can restrict your representation on each of the subspaces and you get two sub-representations, okay? Then what happens is that the original representation is just equivalent to the direct sum of these two representations, which is just defined as, so this is what we desire for an arbitrary representation, that is given a representation of a group G, finite dimensional representation of a group G. We desire that we should be able to decompose it into certain sub-representations till the point that each of the sub-representation is such that it doesn't have any G invariant subspace, okay, so that we cannot further decompose it. So it is just like prime factorization of natural numbers, right? So you keep on factorizing a given natural number into factors till that you just write it as a product of primes, okay? So we have, this gives rise to following definition of what you call an irreducible representation, so which are basic, which would be the building blocks of all the representations, okay? A representation phi from G to GLV of a group G is called irreducible if its only G invariant subspaces are trivial subspace and the whole of V, okay? So you cannot, that means you cannot decompose this representation as a direct sum of two representations, okay, two non-zero representations. So non-zero here means going into GL of a non-zero vector space, okay? So zero dimensional vector space will not really give anything. So a representation is said to be irreducible if it does not have any proper G invariant subspace. So this irreducibility here is some analog of primes in the prime factorization of natural numbers. Okay, so let us see some examples. So let us start with degree 1 representations. So let phi from G to C star be a degree 1 representation. Degree 1 representation of a group G. All right, so that means this is just GL of C, but C over C is one dimensional. What are all G invariant subspaces of C? What could be all G invariant subspaces of C? Zero dimension or one dimension, right? So this representation cannot have any proper G invariant subspace, whatever phi is. So therefore every degree 1 representation by definition turns out to be irreducible. So every degree 1 representation is irreducible. You cannot break it up. So let us go back to the example that we discussed earlier. So one we call phi for this cyclic group of order n, two-dimensional representation GL2C given by phi of any m bar cosine 2 pi m by n minus sine 2 pi m by n sine 2 pi m by n cosine 2 pi m by n. Consider this degree 2 representation of the cyclic group of order m. Okay, and also let me recall the other one also. So psi and z mod nz to GL2C given by psi of m bar equals to e to power 2 pi I m by n 0 0 e to power minus 2 pi I m by n. Look at these two degree 2 representations of the cyclic group of order n. We showed earlier that they are equivalent representations. Okay, so before proving a general fact that equivalent representations will behave the same way, that is if one is irreducible other is irreducible, let us check them independently. So we already showed that psi certainly has invariant subspaces because it's just like a block, it's a block matrix, so it fixes. So psi has the subspace spanned by E1 and E2 as proper invariant subspaces. Okay, so psi has two proper invariant subspaces, so psi is certainly not irreducible. What about phi? So phi should also be irreducible. Phi has this subspace spanned by I comma 1 and minus I comma 1 as proper invariant subspaces. Okay, so both phi and psi are not irreducible representation, they are reducible, you can reduce them. All right, so let us see one more example. The standard representation of the symmetric group Sn. So what is that? So define this phi from the symmetric group Sn to GLNC, okay, by the following. So phi will act on any permutation sigma, and where will it send? I already talked about it in the first video. So phi of sigma is just the permutation matrix corresponding to the permutation sigma. Okay, this matrix where I sigma is the permutation matrix corresponding to the permutation sigma. Permutation sigma. Okay, so the subspace so here what is the vector space here? It is Cn, right? The subspace of Cn, which is equal to Cn spanned by the vector E1 plus E2 plus E3 plus so on En, which is of course one dimensional isomorphic to C, is a Sn invariant subspace of Cn. Okay, so if n is bigger than or equal to 2, then the standard representation is not irreducible. Standard representation of Sn is not irreducible, right? Because it has one dimensional invariant subspace, and why that is the case, you can easily check that phi sigma acting on this vector is what? It is just permutation on these subscripts, so it is E of sigma 1 plus so on plus E of sigma n, right? But it's just a permutation of 1 to n, so it's again, and you are working in the vector space which is abelian, so it just same as E1 plus E2 plus again En. Okay, it's again the same vector, right? This happens for every sigma in Sn. So the permutation representation of the symmetric group is for n bigger than or equal to 2 is not irreducible, and later we will see how to really break this into irreducible components. So let us consider another representation of the symmetric group which is irreducible. So consider phi from S3, take the symmetric group on 3 letters, S3 to GL2C, two-dimensional representation given by. So we know that, let me recall for you, we know that the symmetric group S3, you can generate it by these two elements, one 2 cycle and one 3 cycle, right? These are the two generators of the symmetric group. Okay, and so it is enough to define it on generators. So consider this map phi from S3 to GL2C given by, so phi of 1 2, what is that? Phi of 1 2 is this matrix -1 -1 0 1, and phi of 1 2 3 is this matrix -1 -1 1 0. Look at this. Okay, so I leave it as a homework for you to check that phi is a group homomorphism. Okay, so you see S3 is generated by these two elements, but there are some relation need to be satisfied. Okay, you need to make sure that those relations are satisfied here, right? So phi is a group homomorphism, so phi is a degree 2 representation of the symmetric group on 3 letters. All right, so my claim is that this phi is irreducible. So suppose it is not irreducible, that means it has a proper G invariant subspace, right? So here our vector space is of dimension 2, so invariant subspace, proper G invariant subspace has to be of dimension 1, so it has to be generated by one non-zero vector, right? So let us say W spanned by some vector, say V, be a proper S3 invariant subspace, S3 invariant subspace of C2, okay, because GL2C is GL of C2, right? Subspace of C2. So since it is a proper, since it is a S3 invariant subspace of V, what does it imply? That implies that phi of 1 2, when it acts on the vector V, it should be some scalar multiple of V, right? It should be some lambda V, and similarly phi of 1 2 3 of V should also be some lambda prime of V, okay? And in fact for every element of symmetric group, phi of that element acting on V should be scalar multiple of, right? It's an invariant subspace, so in particular it should happen for this. So what does it really imply here? So see that phi 1 2 is a matrix, right? So I am saying that this non-zero vector is an eigenvector for 1 2 and 1 2 3. In fact it's an eigenvector for all the elements of the group S3, right? But now phi 1 2 is just a 2 by 2 matrix and 1 2 3 is this 2 by 2 matrix. We find their eigenvalues and check that they cannot have a common eigenvector, and therefore we will get a contradiction, right? So let's check it. Shows that phi 1 2 has eigenvalues 1 and -1, okay, and in fact you can find eigenvectors, and in fact one can check that the eigenspace corresponding to this eigenvalues 1 and minus 1. So let us denote by V1. So V1 is in fact a space spanned by E1, okay, 1 0, and I think this is V minus 1, and V the subspace and the eigenspace corresponding to V1 is the subspace spanned by minus 1 2. Okay, so 1 0 and minus 1 2 are eigenvectors corresponding to 1 and minus 1 respectively. And but so now what one need to check is that phi of 1 2 3 cannot have 1 0 and 1 minus 1 2 as eigenvectors. So one can check that. That phi of 1 2 3 this matrix, okay, and if you apply it on 1 0, so this I'm as matrix I am writing them as columns. So 1 2 and a direct check matrix multiplication show that it is minus 1 1, right, which you certainly this you cannot write it as scalar multiple of 1 0, and in fact phi of 1 2 3 acting on the other vector minus 1 2 turns out to be minus 1 again. This you cannot write a scalar multiple of this, okay. So therefore the matrix phi 1 2 and phi 1 2 3 cannot have any common eigenvector, which is a contradiction, right. So thus phi 1 2 and phi 1 2 3 cannot have a common eigenvector, okay, and hence the representation phi must be irreducible. So this example can be generalized, which we rephrase in this proposition. So if phi from G to GL to C is a degree 2 representation of a given group G, okay, then phi is irreducible if and only if phi G as G belong to group G do not have any common eigenvector. Okay, this is a very neat statement. So the proof is just exactly what we did in this example. So if you have a degree 2 representation of a group G and suppose that it is reducible. So reducible means what? It has a proper G invariant subspace, which in this case can be only dimension 1 subspace. So it is generated by one non-zero vector. That means each phi G map that vector into a scalar multiple of itself. That means that vector is a common eigenvector for all the group elements, right? And conversely, if you have a common eigenvector for all the group element, that means that's an invariant subspace. So therefore in degree 2 there is this nice characterization of irreducible representation. So this argument using eigenvectors works in degree 2 and also to some extent in degree 3 also, but not beyond. Okay, so we shall discuss that later on. So let's begin the theory further. So we begin with this definition of a completely reducible representation. So let phi from G to GLV be a representation of a group G. Okay, then we say that phi is completely reducible. Completely reducible, it can be completely reduced if we can write our vector space V as some finite internal, of course our vector space is finite, so it has to be finite. So internal direct sum of some invariant subspaces where each Vi is a G invariant subspace and because each Vi is a G invariant subspace, so you can restrict the representation and get sub-representations, and phi restricted to each Vi is irreducible for all I from 1 to n. Okay, in this case our representation phi is equivalent to this this sub representation. So phi restricted to V1, direct sum, phi restricted to V2, direct sum, and so on. Okay, so in other words, a representation is said to be completely reducible if it can be written as a direct sum of irreducible sub-representations. Let's give one more definition. A representation phi from G to GLV is said to be decomposable if I can decompose my representation space V as a direct sum of two non-zero G invariant subspaces. Okay, so I want both the components to be non-zero, therefore both of them are actually proper because it's a direct sum. Alright, so let's see the relation between irreducibility, complete reducibility, and decomposability. Okay, so what is completely reducible representation? That it's saying that I can decompose my vector space as a direct sum of certain G invariant subspaces such that each of the sub-representation obtained by restricting your representation on this invariant subspaces is irreducible. Okay, so I have been able to decompose my representation as a direct sum of irreducible representations. Whereas a representation is decomposable if I can decompose my representation space V as a direct sum of two proper G invariant subspaces. Okay, somehow we can show that each representation is either irreducible or it is decomposable. Then applying the process iteratively, we can get that every representation is actually completely reducible. Because if it is irreducible, then it is just one copy of reducible representation, and if it is not, then it is decomposable, and therefore I can write it as a direct sum of two representations, then two sub-representations. Then I apply the same process on each sub-representation. If that is irreducible, then I go to the other component. If that is also irreducible, I have shown that my given representation is completely reducible. If not, then I can break it further, and so on. Okay, so but here the point is it is still not clear that if you have a G invariant subspace, then it always has a G invariant complement. Okay, if you have a representation of a group G and you have a G invariant subspace, so you can restrict your representation and you get a sub-representation. But it is not clear why that sub-representation is a summand of the original representation. For that to happen, the complement of that subspace should also be invariant. Okay, and it's not clear from the definition, but if somehow we can show that every representation is equivalent to a representation where it happens, then we are done. Then a theorem like that every representation is either irreducible or decomposable will give you the fact that every representation can be written as a direct sum of irreducible representations, which is something like the unique factorization of integers. Okay, all right, so we shall resume in the next lecture and discuss these things in detail.